School Origination story. I grew up in a military family. That's my mom and dad when we lived in Picatinny Arsenal, New Jersey, and my siblings and a friend of ours from Germany. My dad was a chaplain in the U.S. Army, and he instilled in me the responsibility and hard work from a young age. I had a paper route as soon as I was old enough, a snow blowing route, and when I was a before my junior year of high school, we moved to Germany, and there was the first time that I really got excited about living for the Lord. I was a part of a youth group that had kids that were on fire for the Lord, staff that were pouring into us, and people asking real heart questions, good questions, and just was a great time. I'm the guy up in the back right hand corner there hugging the suit of armor there. I'm not really sure where that was. This was a trip to Ibiza, Spain. Got to travel a ton during those 2+ years in Europe and was so much fun. When I graduated high school, I flew from Frankfurt to Los Angeles and I began to hitchhike across America over the next 4 months. It was a lot of fun. Hitchhiked from LAX up to San Francisco airport and hit friends along the way and ended up back in Watertown, New York. But it was during that time that I decided I should go to Bible college and really focus on kingdom things. I ended up outside of Scranton and Clarks Summit. And shortly after college, my wife and I both began to work at a Fortune 250 company. We actually were very similar to Dunder Mifflin in that we had an office and the warehouse, and instead of paper, we were shipping books, but it was a great experience. They ended up closing down, and my wife and I, during that time, we bought a VW bus and traveled across America for a couple months. From there, we ended up moving to Japan. Not this part of Japan, this part, Okinawa, down south, and really loved our 10 years there in youth ministry. All of our kids were born there and grew up there. Loved learning how to help people walk with Jesus. And love learning how to help people walk with Jesus, what it looked like to make disciples who would then make disciples. In fact, when I was a junior high youth pastor, at one point we had 4 generations of disciples. And this is actually a picture of me baptizing a student, but often we would have students baptize other students, especially if they had led them to the Lord and were discipling them. I started having my kids. I encouraged many of them to go off and work with YWAM. They started going around the world, sharing the gospel with others. In 2003, I was actually on a prayer retreat at White Beach, and for the first time, I had this idea of how could we do some kind of longer term discipleship, maybe in some sort of residence that was also centered around business. And so this has been, for me, this school starting this year has been an 18-year journey of learning to make disciples and being involved in business's mission and business and a bunch of different things. And it's been a long and great journey, but I'm really excited to be here. One of my first businesses was actually an affiliate income for Netflix. They used to give, I don't remember what it was, $10 a person if you would introduce somebody to Netflix. In 2003, that was pretty easy to do. When I got my first check, I was so excited that I actually shut the business down, the affiliate website business, because I thought I'm way more excited about this than I am about my youth ministry. I must be being led astray. A number of years later, a leadership coach asked me, "Who do you think put the desire for business in you?" And I just started to weep, realizing it was God. In 2009, I decided that I needed to, not that I needed to, but over prayer, I just was like, God, you have to end this slavery going on around the world. And I felt like God said, well, if you feel that strongly, why don't you do something about it? So I began to pray, and we started an organization called Stop Slavery. God led us eventually to move to Thailand. Not this part of Thailand, Raleigh Beach, but this part, Chiang Mai up north. And I was running discipleship schools during the time and learning what a residential discipleship school was like. But at the same time, I also began to be very involved in Business's Mission. This is Mark Plummer, who started businessesmission.com and bamtraining.org. His wife, Josie Plummer, is part of the BAM Global Congress. They became some of our best friends. We were in house church together. We would do meals together. We lived 150 meters apart and just had a lot of time with them. We also were connected to a lot of other business as mission folks. This was a dinner with couples that were either peers or people that we mentored in our young church, and they were all involved in business as mission. And so even though I thought I was setting aside business for 5 years, I really got a great education in missional business living. This is Peter, a guy who I helped to learn to make money online, and he graduated college in 2011 and has never worked a real job an hour in his life because he knows how to make money online. And because of that, he came and worked with us for free for 2 years, just serving in any way that he could. Bay was a former assistant of mine who ended up starting his own cafe. I kept telling him, Bay, this is something you can do. And one day he came to me and said, okay, I'm going to quit and try this cafe thing. Can I have a loan? And he actually did pay me back. In 2014, one of my mentors, Ron Wilson, began to talk to me about movement of God. He actually invited me out to this restaurant, and we sat at this table right in front there, and he, for an hour and a half, talked to me about movement of God. And I got done and I thought, that was the weirdest conversation of my life. No, how are the wife? How are the kids? How's it going? Just all about movement of God. At the same time, I was reading a book called Deliberate Simplicity, and I thought it was about house church, but in reality, it was about a movement of God. That fall, I was teaching in Australia, and one of the early founders of YWAM, Cal Steiner, happened to be one of my housemates. He was also teaching that week. And he, for about 3 nights, talked to me about movement of God. And then one day, my leadership coach, Ray Wheeler, who wrote the book, How to Lead Like Jesus, Change the Paradigm, he, on one of our calls, just started talking to me about movement of God, very sensitive to the Spirit, very reticent to speak directly to me about anything. But he took 10 minutes, which I think is the longest time he ever talked about anything in our 10 years of coaching relationship, about movement of God. And the last thing was, I was going to the Philippines to recruit missionaries for our work in Cambodia at the time. And I felt like as I got on the plane, God said, you're not going to recruit missionaries. And at the time I was doing anti-trafficking work. I was doing discipleship schools. And I think literally if I had been in the airport and my luggage wasn't on the plane, I would have just walked out of the airport because I was overly busy at the time. But during my time in the Philippines, the very last speaker at this conference that I went to was actually a guy that Ron Wilson had discipled 23 years prior, one of 4 cadets at the police academy that were freshmen. And he ended up becoming part of a movement of God that has seen over 1 million people come to Christ. 4 different ministries have sprung up. Half of the top echelon of the police in the Philippines now have been discipled through this movement, as well as about 40,000 of the police officers. And the very last speaker at this conference was actually the first guy, one of those first 4 that was discipled. And I just got goosebumps realizing, oh wow, I am in the midst of a disciple-making movement. I'm able to experience one and see one. So after that, I thought, okay, I need to start a disciple-making movement through business. I went out and tried to start a couple of escape rooms. Well, I did start a couple of escape rooms, and they were great. People loved them. They had a blast, but I wasn't making enough money. In fact, I was losing a ton of money. Lost about $250,000. It really hurt. And after that, while I was licking my wounds, began to be more involved in the Business as Mission movement, working with Business as Mission discipleship schools, doing some speaking and training. And then I started my own discipleship school called CEO Shortcut, a precursor to BAM School. We talked about discipleship, entrepreneurship, and adventure. And the idea was equipping Christ-centered entrepreneurs to launch their own business. I quickly realized I could not coach 8 or 10 or 12 people all doing their own business. And I wanted to provide a way for people to attend under scholarship. So we're only accepting 1 or 2 students that want to pay their own way and be coached on their own business. Everyone else will be working on one business project. I also became really involved in the BAM movement around the world, emceeing and speaking at BAM conferences and also BAM training. Just on all different kinds of things, marketing, systems, thinking missionally about our business. This is my family in Chiang Mai, Thailand. A couple of things that I've learned over the years is that movement of God has to be baked into the business model that we're doing. I tried escape rooms because I thought, we'll be able to connect with people coming through and it'll make lots of money. But since then, I've been thinking about how movement of God can be baked into the business model that we do. Generally, as studying movements of God, generally God facilitates movement through young people. And the third thing is it takes a team to do big things. I think I tried to do too much on my own in years past. Our vision is free business and discipleship education around the world. We'd love to see many BAM schools spring up around the world. We'd love to facilitate a disciple-making movement through business and launch missional business leaders into their own business. And so that's what the BAM School is all about. If you would like to help us launch a disciple-making movement through business, please go to thebamschool.com, connect with me. If you'd like to support, you can do that there under Vision. If you'd like to talk to me about ways that you can be involved, definitely connect with me at thebamschool.com.